Okay, so they are from SAP Aeronautics, and also David Torre is from ASRI. And
Okay.
Ignacio, he was the last visit. I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
So today we are here for see the opportunities to collaborate. I don't know, maybe to explore that.
I would like to I can explain, of course.
Mhm.
Of course. Just to complement David, so the Amazon Sustainability Research Institute was started officially in November of last year.
Okay.
It is one of UTEC's 5 research centers, and it started working closely with Amanatari. Amanatari is a bio-business focused NGO, currently working in 3 communities in Loreto, northern Amazon. Amanatari is founded also by Eduardo Hochschild, who's also a founder of UTEC.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we are 2 separate entities legally, but we cooperate, work together. Probably in August or September, we will be having a joint offices with Amanatari in the first floor right in front of UTEC.
Okay.
That's part of the campus, but looking to the outside. And David is the first researcher for us. Before
Okay.
the first one, he has all the history, and I am serving as director of the institute. Also, at the same time, serving as director of research, development, and innovation for UTEC. So both.
Yeah.
both.
I remember you
Yes.
being present.
So it's a short intro on context on the institute.
Great. Very useful context, and the reason for this meeting, and thank you for and Patricia, who is not here, for organizing the meeting, is for us. We for your knowledge, we are representing SAB Aeronautics in particular. I work at SAB Aeronautics, and CLAS, just to be perfectly clear and correct, represents the corporate central organization responsible for industrial cooperation in Latin America. So CLAS has broad reach. I work in industrial cooperation in aeronautics precisely because this is part of our sales organization where we promote and sell, hopefully soon, a Gripen fighter aircraft to the Peruvian Air Force, to the FAP. Okay, and just to give you the background a little bit, 2 minutes. Every defense procurement, every defense acquisition program, like when the government buys defense equipment, and the fighter is defense equipment, it always comes with a request of one way or another, one form or another, of compensation to the economy, to the society of that sale. So if the government pays, let's say $2 billion, the government expects that the contractor pays off that kind of pays off in a way. That value compensates it with projects which would bring value to the economy, to the society, and so on. I won't bore you with offset multipliers, offset value. This is not like 1 for 1, but
You know that.
and you know that very well. You are nodding. So tell me when I should stop explaining.
Okay, I'll let you know, but thank you.
Stop
Yeah.
explaining, Eva. Okay, then I continue.
Oh no, I didn't. I wasn't stopping you. That's gonna be Sarah these two, so you
That
can,
you understand the offset.
Yeah, I've been
What
doing
is
things
it?
in international cooperations, so
Excellent.
So I'm a bit aware, especially for the environmental side of things.
Exactly. And you probably then know that offset may be direct and indirect. Direct related in this case, and let's just focus on the actual procurement of the fighter aircraft and everything around it, maintenance and technology in general, but defense technology. And then indirect is, we can say many other things, like investment, foreign direct investment it can be, and Klaus can tell you for what, 2 hours, 3 hours, or even longer.
Should I start now?
How many different forms offset, indirect offset may happen. And just to home in on Peru. Peruvian government, in the form of Ministry of Defense, you can guess that, of course, has an offset department, and they run the offset programs. before they start running those programs, they obviously set the requirements for them. So what this particular procurement should involve in terms of offset and programs, and for this one, it's of course aerospace industry, defense industry, in the specific areas which are defined by the MOD. Some part of it, of the offset, they see as important also to include programs with social impact. It could include social programs, social projects, like social really, like for the society, for the communities, for like water, say that. So we are encouraged, and I think we would do that anyway, because it's part of our sustainability agenda. It's part of our corporate social responsibility agenda that we do look at where we could contribute as a company to developing long-term relationship with the country, which we always strive to develop when we go with deals like this with offer grip, and it's a long-term partnership. It's 30 years minimum, if not more, of course. So to just home in again, even more on the why we are meeting today, is that we visited this university. We had representatives of two Swedish universities. You remember the meeting? So part of our approach of building a strategic partnership with the country is to see how not only industry to industry can work together, but also, as we in Sweden do, how we can collaborate between industry but also academia. So universities are the indispensable element of the collaboration ecosystem: innovation, technology, research. So this is how we and so we also want to promote this to countries where we want to collaborate. That's why the visit of the universities. And very interestingly, from the presentation, we found out that one of the research areas that you are looking at is so much related to sustainability of Amazon. And this brought us to this meeting to meet with you. Some ideas regarding social impact programs that we received from the MOD, Ministry of Defense, was exactly related to what they call recovery of the Amazon. You can call it reforestation of the Amazon after the various practices, including mining, legal or less legal. We probably are aware of this. You are much more aware of this. We are only learning here. But we understand that the idea behind this could be to help regrow, help the recover or rebuild, maybe that's the word, the ecosystem, so that it can be reused, so used again by the local communities, maybe also used for farming again, or increasing the farming, and therefore that gives the society, also the communities, more opportunities for revenues and so on. So this was the idea that was brought to our attention. So we started to look in Sweden, how can we address this? Because in the beginning it was a line on the list of topics. So we started to look, and we found one company, I forgot one word, with nanotechnology.
Okay.
Sorry, because that was reforestation. So recovery of the Amazon with nanotechnology. That was also, I think, linked in another line on that whole list of bioindustry. So like helping the local communities with the approach with the bioindustry. Whatever, it means much more to you than us yet. And that we connected the dots. We thought that maybe your research institutes are looking into these topics, and that's why we would like to understand what topics you plan to, also you are starting to look into, what research areas. Is this the area you're interested in? And then maybe we could connect you in one way or another, maybe with some more institutes working under Ministry of Environment,
Okay.
Minam, one of them being Peruvian Amazon Research Institute, that's in English, and IIAP, and the other National Agrarian Innovation Institute. So at least these two, I thought that could be relevant, but you have to tell
Yes,
us.
that's Peruvian Amazon Research Institute is probably in Spanish the IAP.
IAP, and the other is INIA.
The INIA.
INIA.
We actually have an MOU with IAP.
Okay.
And I'm traveling there in 2 weeks to kind of. We've had the MOU since 2023, but if we change directors and starting this kind of to introduce myself and talk to them, and so with INIA we've had contacts. I don't know if we have an MOU, but it's definitely a very relevant institution. As a center, what we're doing is kind of in the process of consolidating a research agenda. So it started with an initial focus around the work of a Manatari, but not necessarily limited in scope to the work of a Manatari. So not necessarily limited in scope to that area of research. What we have already ongoing in UTEC, and that's kind of coming a bit under the umbrella of the institute, is for the past, I think it's 6 or 7 years, we've had a group that has done research on remediation of Amazon areas that have been mined for gold and which have mining tailings. So these are areas that are already not only deforested but currently contaminated.
And contaminated. Okay.
So they developed technology with the idea of recovering the gold that is left in those tailings and using the sale of that gold to finance the reforestation and to work around the reforestation. That is, so that technology has been taken to a pilot level, and it's, and if I'm not mistaken, because the focus of the lead investigator in this, one of the focuses of the lead investigator of this group is nanotechnology, so that the fit might be actually a good. And then another area, it's also maybe a bit before the reforestation part, but it's but it works in tracking contaminants and understanding their behavior. Is the work being done with environmental DNA. It's also very focused in the apps. I would say currently those are probably the two closest ones. And we have done work in water treatment that I think can be amenable to transference also to the Amazon side. The closest right now probably is ongoing would be this remediation, and I can share some more information on this remediation efforts with the idea of potential of eventually reforesting too, but trying to make it after having funding to start the remediation process and the recovery process. The idea is that this recovery process generates proceeds that can also make it a bit more financially sustainable. That's kind of the key idea.
Very good.
This is still a very, so the process is still sensible in terms of who do you work with, because there are illegal miners who you cannot work with, and how do you access those tailings and those, but probably working alongside the ministries that could be made a bit easier or a bit more helpful. I don't know.
I will add not a specific project, but from our initial efforts working with in the Loreto region, this initial area of study. We are touching critical points in terms of how communities participate and also can ideally make a profit of these conservation initiatives for that particular case. But the governance structures and the lessons we are getting from that social research will be also could be adapted to reforestation, restoration projects. at the end of the day, you will be also working with rural communities, right?
Yeah.
And the expectations they have, the failures and success, that sort of history of similar initiatives that have been implemented across the country, I think are also very relevant for any new one, right? In terms of how we can make it more successful, more with more impact and long-term impact, actually, because the challenge is always how the project can survive, you know, beyond, you know, the 5-year, the 10-year mark, and ideally with local actors, backing them, taking some ownership, right? Could be ministries and authorities, but also local organizations, right? More field-based.
And the experience is that when the local authorities is active, it's better, or
they are necessary.
they are necessary.
In general, when the local communities are active and involved, it's better for conservation. The local authorities, they should be involved. One thing to bear in mind is this depends a bit on the areas. The area in the southern Amazon is probably more, illegal mining is more prevalent. And in that case, sometimes local authorities are actually aligned with the illegal activity, which is definitely an issue to bear in mind. But ideally, having the local authorities too, but definitely having the local communities helps to boost conservation. The focus of our work with Amanatari there is trying to give communities both the increase in quality of life and increase in economic resources that can compete against the economic resources that the illegal economy might offer them to deforest their land and use it for their purposes. But the idea is not only to compete, so to have the bio businesses give them more economic resources, but also increase the quality of life. Because the illegal economies might bring better economic resources, but they also contaminate the land, they have negative health effects and a whole host of negative activities for the populations. The area in the northern Amazon where we're currently working is illegal mining is less prevalent there than in Madre de Dios, which is part of the south, but there are definitely other activities that can contribute to deforestation. And our focus with Amanatari has been in the northern Amazon. However, most of our remediation work, which predates the establishment of the center, has been in Madre de Dios, where you find the most areas affected by illegal mining. But you have the areas affected by illegal mining, the areas affected by illegal logging, by agriculture or cattle grazing. So there's definitely a whole host of activities, and what we see is we need this combination of the research institutions, the industry, the communities, and also in many cases the social or the NGOs that work closely with the communities to promote conservation in different ways. So to us it is this is part of the overall aim of the institute. So the institute has a kind of an overarching goal to work towards preventing deforestation and then hopefully bringing it, clawing back actual
mitigating the outcome of
yes, and but we understand that for that's a very big task. We need an integrated and articulated effort from different actors in society, and this is quite interesting. I mean, I think it could fit with some ongoing efforts, and also fit with capabilities we have that haven't necessarily developed yet in specific projects, but research capabilities and sparking research collaborations. That's actually one of our main goals. When I came back to tech, and part of our strategic plan for research is increasing our international collaborations for research, because our idea is to have research that has social and economic and environmental impact in Peru, but can also be scientific production of high quality that can be shown outside and attract talent. And that talent doesn't necessarily have to work with us. That talent can be partners that are interested in working in Peru. And we think the Amazon, what we look for when we do research is which areas where, if you remember the presentation, in terms of size, we are a small university. And our idea is to even at full size, be a relatively small university. So we need to focus and find which areas we can be competitive, we can be attractive, finding areas that are very important for Peru, but also have an impact globally. And I think Amazon Corporation checks both of those boxes. So that I think there's a very good fit, and having the government also be a part of it is very important, because it's a way it can be a way of expanding that impact, and it's not always easy to get government on board.
I have a few more questions, if I may, but perhaps just to, do you want to say something?
No.
Just to say that the idea that we had and that we're coming with, but really in the very early stages, that's why I don't think we actually feel authorized exactly to tell you so many details of the solution. But in principle, model-wise, what we will try to achieve as our initial idea is to actually bring such institutes like yours to the project team.
Okay.
So actually, with the technology from Sweden that we could work on together. And that's why we thought that these two institutes, but we obviously will have also a meeting with Minam a little later this week. But we thought that it would, considering the area of interest of ASRI, of the institute, we picked, in fact, your institute to become perhaps potentially part of that project team. But that's why we probably also wanted to understand a little bit more how you work, what you're focusing on, how you work with Manatari, what is the reach, where are you how are you funded, but we know much more now today. Because we also need to understand, with research projects, international research projects, usually the way we did it, let's say in Brazil or somewhere, is that usually the Swedish part of the research project is financed by Swedish organizations, Innova or so similar. And the Brazilian in this case would be
by local.
And it's really difficult for let's say Swedish organizations, so it's impossible for Swedish innovation organization to finance the international researchers. But we can find some sort of also solutions here. So what we will try to understand also this week is what are the research calls or programs that the Minam is looking at, maybe through these institutes. I don't know how it works exactly. Is it the ministry, or is it the IAP or INIA has their own independence and their own calls? I don't know how that works exactly. Because we were looking for connecting, because we will bring, let's say, technology here and for working for various applications, how this can be applied, various biodiversity models, things like that. And that would be the work to be done under this project here locally together.
Right.
And that was our concept. Swedish and Peruvian. But then that work here, ideally, if it's also funded from this side, because there's a lot of things that might be needed also, and I don't know,
Yes.
test field and so on and so
Yeah,
on.
and then the local presence in the field, the field testing. Hopefully, if you can, for example, YAP, has specific capabilities located in a city, but in the city in the Amazon, so they're in Iquitos, very closer to. So it's many times it's useful when you need testing. Sometimes you need to come to Lima, sometimes you need to go abroad, but if you have it closer, so have that I guess inventory of assets and capabilities in different parts of the country. But would be happy to be a part of the project team and understand how we can feel and contribute.
This is a start. We are really starting the journey. As I said, we will meet with the ministry this week to understand what are the options. Is there any interest? Because I think back to your point, the challenge is how sustainable these programs could be.
Yes.
We cannot look at 1 year, 5 years even. We really need to look at longer perspectives. So we can start off something, but then it can die because of lack of funding, as we heard so many times.
Engagement and local.
In many countries, we heard also that prototypes and then nothing.
Yes, and that's I think a big part of our focus with Amanatari is both the NGO and the university are committed long term, and there's a budget for general operating expenses, and so we don't look for projects necessarily to finance our existence, but the idea of the projects is to further and scale impacts. But there is a commitment from both sides for the long term, and not try to be, especially I think this is something that's been very evident in the past few months with the changes in U.S. international cooperation funding, not be specifically project dependent. So if the project dies, then our team has to disband. We're part of the university and research capability in general. And the idea is that projects allow us to expand our reach, but also expand in our case specifically, both scientific production and applied research. And in the case of Amanatari, have a greater impact on their communities. But initially, all of Amanatari's work, for example, has been self-funded. And now we're starting to look for external funding to expand to more communities and to also to kind of to consolidate the model and see a community work model and see how we can transfer it to others, eventually to other communities. But there's I think that from our end, that's also that commitment in terms of being involved and committed to be redundant to our work in the Amazon beyond specific project funding. It always helps in terms of focusing on specific areas, and currently the center itself is expanding in terms of researchers with the idea of having greater impact.
Great. I think this may be a good opportunity.
No, definitely.
To have a boosting.
Yes, no, I think it's a good opportunity, and then we're looking for researchers, regionally, but abroad. If we have researchers that want to come to Peru, or even in some cases, because we will have also an AI for conservation, AI for the biodiversity track, that might be not necessarily, could potentially even be full remote, depending on the type of, because they will work more with data, don't necessarily need to be in the Amazon or in Lima ready to go to the Amazon. They can travel every now and again. But yes, we're happy to participate also in the initial conversations, and if there's any feedback or
you would have to
or any brainstorming in terms of
messengers.
No, of course, but any connecting with other local organizations, or if there's any brainstorming in terms of the model that we can feedback on. So happy to.
Very good. That would be very useful, because I think the most optimal model has to be found. Not like this is just an idea. So.
Yeah, but
just from my understanding, you said just now it's more to help the communities or to via this finding the goal that might be there in the remaining part or remaining no, let's say number one is to get this financial system working before we start reforestation, more to make them to build up alternative financiation compared to the illegal things.
Yes.
And then the second phase is more to go to reforestation and build up that capability.
Okay.
How long time forward in the future do you think that moment is when you start looking at reforestation and
For us?
or in general, for you and in general?
Look, basing on the experiences in general, we're talking about decades.
I thought so.
I mean, to reach the point, right, where we have the technicals of the project, but also the social capital, right? That doesn't mean that you cannot. You have to start, today with the technical, and we're talking about technology, right? Hardware, software, so that can should start also from the get-go. But on the ground is, Peru, we have at least 10 million hectares of deforested land. We need to also prioritize and find a place.
And readiness in that local community also to
at the micro level, right? We have about 2,000 native communities on the Amazon, another 1,500 on the Andes, Amazon, which are the more mature ones that we can rely on. A number of analyses that you have to perform in the phase one. Right?
Yes.
And the objective, if we're talking about reforestation for timber harvesting, right? Or is more for securing the watershed and for conservation purposes. Therefore, it's not the same. And I heard things from SECLAN, which is our planning center, national center, in terms of joining forces with the army to do the reforestation itself. So. Because of this, the scales of the effort, I don't know if it has something to do with that, but it's a new stakeholder, right? Our armed forces also contributing, but at the end of the day, the people who live there are the communities, right? They will
That's
take care.
Crucial thing.
Yes, and are the ones who will, I guess, have the staying power. Even if you have the army, they will go in for a short time and then they have to move back. I think something very important, going back to David's point, is what do you want to do and what's the purpose of the reforestation? In some cases it's eventual timber harvesting, and that could take decades, but eventually it starts producing and maybe you can make it sustainable. But the other thing is understanding the impacts of what you do on the landscape. You don't want to, because maybe a reforestation effort with non-native species might have other unintended effects. Has happened in not only in the Amazon, but in cases you just begin or give rise to some invasive species that then generate other problems in the ecosystem. So there's a previous work of understanding, the ecosystem, which again, something that comes up a lot is we talk many times about the Amazon as if it's one thing. And
It makes it much simpler.
yeah, it makes it much simpler, of course. But you have so many different ecosystems, and the environment changes so much. So there's, and that's why we see also the important, and when we work, for example, with Amanatari or with other NGOs, the important role of research to understand, what you're going to do, what impacts that might have, tracking also, the results to be the most efficient and to achieve the goals of reforesting, but then having, and it depends also if you want to do a reforestation and then trying to bring back the ecosystem closer to what it was, or just doing something like just using it again for cattle production. Is that's, I think, those having the objectives clear, being clear on what the science behind it, to what you're gonna do, is definitely very important. Not to have unintended consequences or generate externalities.
But would you say that for each area, but I know how big area, whether we count by communities or how, such model would have to be analyzed and developed separately? Or so what is the scale we're looking at? Because that's exactly actually when I look at these notes that I have from our ideas, these are exactly the topics to be potentially included in this kind of research collaboration. Not only so using the technology because I'll tell you, it's a technology that boosts the growth. So speed. So using that as a starting point or as a catalyst maybe, that could lead, also rather have to be preceded by this kind of analysis of what ecosystem, what species, local, exactly, what that ecosystem should be, what should be the biodiversity to actually allow maybe that faster growth, but also, and the other point here, sorry, I'm reading the notes again because it's fairly fresh on my mind also. What biodiversity, also what ecosystem could be developed in order to allow the local communities to grow cacao, so other things that they could then sell and increase their revenue and that. So that's exactly, that's why I'm so interested, and I think it's spot on what we hear, because that's the kind of analysis that definitely is required. To your point about the objective and why we do reforestation, so not to do it for the sake of just growing some trees so that it's green again because it's CO2 emissions reduction. It's much more deeper and longer term results, not consequences, but results also, benefits also. So
of course.
That would be excellent input into that kind of work, I think, potentially.
When you speak with Minan, probably depending with which team is, they are very active these days in putting into practice the Paris Agreement Accords. So when you mention climate and carbon sequestration, they already signed at least 4 government-to-government agreements. Switzerland was the first, but now it's Korea, Japan, and this is a more broad conversation, but most of the main climate mitigation activities here in the country are in the forestry or sector, right? The affordable forestry land use sector. So an intervention of this size, it will certainly have an impact in Peru delivering their national contributions to that, global agreement, and in some cases they will be able to support other countries as well, if both parties agree on doing so. So you can ask them more about that. They will certainly. They are very active these days. It's been a long process, but they are reaching a point where they finally can get those, not only the MOUs, but the transactions or collaborations using the language of the Paris Agreement. And then just to finish my previous thought, CEPLAN is the acronym of Peru's National Planning Authority, and they are already socializing a strategy for 2050, and one of the key pillars is reforestation. I don't know if that they must have been in touch with the Ministry of Defense and everybody, because they are above all the ministers.
So maybe that's how it got to
perhaps
the list of priorities for offset, because that's that it
It's
comes
very
from
high
various
level.
ministries, these priority areas,
Exactly.
and then it's channeled through the offset department and reaches people like us
Right.
for inspiration
And here we are.
and like find something.
Yes.
No, but I think it could be a perfect match. Coming back to the question about the communities. So, for each community, different model? Would that be so replicable then, or how would
more
that
than a
work?
community, we could have very big communities, but it's more about the geographies and jurisdictions, as they call it now.
Jurisdictions as well.
Yeah, so you will have a subnational authority and landscape approach is needed, and probably we're talking about millions of hectares. So then watersheds, the water is important at the local level, so that's another angle to compare places. Community could be 1,000 hectares or 20 million, 2 million hectares.
And everyone, in fact, might be different in terms of the ecosystem, the actual species, and what types of trees or plants.
It could, but you could probably find some, at least areas with geographic similarity. So you don't have to do it at the community level, which would probably be way too granular. Make it. If you have to do a study at every community, probably would make it unmanageable. But there are certain larger geographic areas that you could focus on and try to perhaps extrapolate them, but not to the whole of the average.
No, because I'm thinking about sorry, I'm maybe too boring now, but I'm thinking about the scale. So how many of these analyses and reports would have to be made and produced in order to actually make a bigger impact? I'm thinking biodiversity-wise, for each community it might be different, but maybe it's about learning, how to do, then kind of spreading this. I don't know, a lot of things to think about, of course, because that's why I've always been curious, about the reach. Amanatari said that, are you focusing on sort of one area and only one area? You mentioned north, but this must be many hectares, not just a few kilometers. So how do you actually achieve that impact, big impact? How are you? Is this the plan?
No, that was the beginning, right? The northern Peruvian Amazon is the beginning. The whole idea is to see the whole system, so the Amazon basin, and we should keep in mind that also when we talk about the basin is like part of the Andes, like without trees, naturally, but it's the beginning of the watershed. Of course, the lower Amazon is like a key part. So conservation was the first priority. But as ASPRI and now is where we are starting to see areas or activities where UTEC is not necessarily overlapping with Amanatari, is in the higher parts of the Selva Alta, we call it,
closer to the Andes.
So where cocoa, or mostly coffee, for instance, it doesn't grow in the lower Amazon. It grows in the upper Amazon. And you have cooperatives more than communities. So we are starting to exploring different key areas of work.
That's a good point, not to try to make it more complicated. In some
No.
cases you have indigenous local communities that have been for a long time in the land. In other places you have what sometimes referred to as colonos, which might be people who came down from communities in the Andes and kind of settled and started working. And the dynamics are different. And some have been living in that land, and that's kind of, there's a different approach. Others came to that land more for economic reasons, which doesn't exclude any one of them. It's just the approaches might be a bit different depending on the area. Part of the idea with, and we have started, Manatari has started more with indigenous communities, is trying to develop a template for, kind of a model for working with, which doesn't mean that we just pick up and replicate exactly the same thing, but there are certain general lines in terms of, for example, identifying with them, working with them, identifying the capabilities they have, identifying maybe what are the key products they work with, and value chains they might be involved in. From our end, with those products, one thing we try to do is, from a research standpoint, try to identify if there's additional value-added products that might be, taken from those fruits or from those fibers, because the Amazon context is very challenging in terms of, for one, logistics. So if you try to produce something in very high volume with a small margin, just getting it out of the Amazon and out to Lima, probably you lose all that competitive advantage. The other thing is, if you try to harvest something in very, very high volume, you might go against your conservation and sustainability objectives, because you just need to. And the idea is to look for products that keep, well, that's the initial priority, that keep the forest standing, so that you don't have to, one of the main products is you can cut some of the branches, but the whole tree is still standing. But then you don't cut all of the branches. You have cut some, and then the whole tree is standing. It can regenerate, and you don't deforest. So those are some of the. Another one we're working with right now is also honey, and it's this honey made of native stingless bees. And there's the traditional uses for honey, but there's also potential cosmetic uses and other areas that we're exploring. Other areas might not have the same products, but the model would be similar in terms of trying to identify those value chains, see how they can make work logistically, how we identify the higher value add. And we're also there including other work that's not directly tied to the value chain, but it's more tied to ecosystem services, biodiversity, and enabling conditions such as health, territorial governance, which is also actually important for reforestation, land governance, health, water, even energy, because these are areas that, while we have solutions for running water in the cities, it's just not, they don't translate well. So looking for context appropriate solutions to along those lines. But the idea is to try to work out a model and have those general and guiding principles as we expand to other communities. That will be that's the goal, because our focus right now is northern, or more on the focus is the beginning has been northern Amazon. Next step would be Peru, but the larger ambition is Pan-Amazon, so the whole of the Amazon basin. That's with, of course, partners and collaborators.
That is, that's a mission or the vision that is really speaking to us. But step by step, absolutely.
Of course, yes. Yes. No, the idea is to have a guiding mission, but you have to take one step at a time. Learn to walk before running, as they say.
I think we are in the right address. I don't. So, do we have more questions? I was interested in the government's interest. I think you have explained a lot also, and that's a good preparation for our meeting. We will be trying to discuss these topics also with those two institutes, because we thought that, at least initial thinking is that should be one way or another involved, as you probably agree. And we were thinking that one brainstorm session could be useful really to meet with. So once we find interest at this level,
Yes.
I understand there could be potential interest in
Of course.
further discussions from us really.
Yes.
Then we could set up something so that you could discuss details
And I think if
of the project.
find a good, I mean, besides David, who's, as I mentioned, the initial researcher, for example, in our team and in Amanatari's team, we both have former ministers of the environment working, so they might have good insights, both from the technical side, but also from the more political side in terms of how that can work.
Cool.
Always have, that perspective from the policy angle.
We know that is very useful. Absolutely. No, and so and regulations and legislation also, if funding. I guess that, but from what we have so far learned from UTEC, you try to be self-contained and self-sufficient in many areas. So and not dependent on funding. I think Ronabeg, for example, I think it was a little bit like, maybe not necessarily that you, if I don't mistake. But I think one of the comments was that you do not work so much with Pronavec.
We work with Pronavec.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's we work with Pronavec and the different government entities, and we don't depend on them.
But it's
so if
that's
Pronavec
what
doesn't
I
come
tried
through,
to say.
we can keep going, and that's I think similar for Ashley and Manatari. We have started self-funded, but the idea is external funding can help us grow and expand our impact. But if a project, we have several proposals on if they don't come through, it doesn't mean we won't go home. Which sometimes happens with some of these projects. If the proposal doesn't come through, then everyone goes home.
But there are in principle research cores to reach too. So like like
yes, no, we have
scholarships, something else, but
yes. Yeah, and we have. I mean, we look for funding, but we have a specific, also scientific production targets in terms of journal articles, definitely things tied to university production. It depends on the type of project, but we think we can work around.
Cool.
What do you see as next steps, or we wait for your
I don't know
communication?
Yet. No, I'm so.
Do you need anything from our side, or?
No, I think that firstly, just to be very open with you, that as I mentioned, we'll meet with the ministry and see if that is of interest, that kind of technology, because it is a very long term. So for the result, you have to wait. And if you boost growing trees,
Yes.
we all know how that works. But as I also mentioned, that this could be a very good base for this kind of research collaboration and finding the various sort of maybe even short-term solutions for various applications. It doesn't have to be trees, maybe plants, cocoa, so all different aspects. So we were thinking that we see first if there is interest, and then also we were planning to learn more about the two institutes, which we identified as part of our desktop research, which we tried to do a little bit prepared at least. And then we go back to the company that has the technology and see, so we need to discuss with them and sort of develop a model, because it's a small company, they do not have many resources there, so they cannot travel endlessly, etc. So we need to find a good optimal solution, how we can involve their resource in developing this project. And probably we would look at the proof of concept first to start to test how things work between the partners, what the partners could bring, that itself, of course, will take time to plan. Of course, because we need to think, which partner could bring what to the table, how we financed it, how we funded, where we as Saab can come in.
Yes.
That's a lot of planning. So I guess as we have been in touch, we are in regular contact more or less. So allow us please a few moments to just get our heads around that concept, and then we will be back with more, probably teams or something else, similar workshop or exchange of thoughts, ideas. I'm sure that researchers will understand each other much better than through messengers like us, although we try to obviously facilitate establishment of partnerships. So that's where is our role.
No, this is very useful. Thank you very much for thinking of us and coming back to us, and we're happy to help. If there's any additional information we can provide from tech, just let us know, and happy to be involved in the process in any way. I think it's useful.
It will be now our role to give you more information
Okay.
about what we have
Great.
in our minds.
Perfect.
But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for
Again, my
taking time.
apologies for being late.
No.
No.
We have been in this traffic in Lima for many times now. This is my 8th time now. I think half of the time in Lima I spent in taxi.
Yeah, no, I don't have a calculator, but I just need new glasses. So I went quickly to La Comar, which is
We were in La Comar
5
before.
minutes from here, but then we're
Yes.
back on the way.
But we walked.
That's better for many reasons.
This is the only, in UTEC is the only meeting to which we walk, actually. And otherwise
It's so
we have
good.
to take
It's
a
so
bus.
good.
And it feels great. It's like,
Yeah,
it's
no.
good.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I will give you more details very soon, I promise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Gracias.
Gracias.
What about the weather is now
Cooler.
Yeah.
Much nicer. Because we like it warm, but not that warm as we experienced here some time ago.
Now Lima looks very different. I don't know if you remember your last trip. Yeah.
No, it's really good. You can breathe. You can live. You can
But is the winter time is always it's cloudy or is it different? Various?
We have like a very common way to say to Lima that Lima la gris. Do you know what does it mean?
Yeah.
What was it?
Lima la gris. I don't know. Maybe like it's very common to have this color.
Ah, yes, yeah, like a llama's belly, or not llama's. Which other animal belly?
Yeah.
The donkey's belly.
Donkey's belly. Donkey's belly. Because of the clouds that
Yeah.
But do you think that the sun is still operating? Like through the clouds or not?
You mean
Like,
It depends a lot of percent. Because I don't know, Lima is really big, but maybe here in Barranco now is cloudy, and also in Surco you can find like the sun shining.
Okay.
So it's really different.
I have noticed that. In Miraflores, it's fluffy, and you go in